the 17th of March 2022. Welcome everybody. I'm Dana Durnford, also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. I hope you're doing well. We got updates for you tonight. Always takes me a couple of moments to get this show on the road. You can call in at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Pro-nuclear, anti-nuclear, neutral. You can text. We can read it out online if you're shy. Don't be scared, homie. And let's get it on. Let's get after it. The crazy industry. So, there seems to be some confusion about reality. Oh, we got a poll tonight, don't we? Don't forget the poll, Dana. Is Japan and the International Atomic Energy Agency covering up damage at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns? This is a no-brainer, of course, dear. As you can understand. So the International Atomic Energy Agency is United Nations. It's 193 militaries that are gaslighting you, or pulling the wool over your eyes. And Rafael Grossi, he's the current face of the industry, and he's a terrible person. He's been known to sniff bicycle seats. Alrighty, you like your atoms for humanity. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. Patriotic dirty bombs. 2 sieverts an hour of better radiation, so they're not counting alpha, neutrons, or gamma, because they're better than you. Per liter, there allegedly was going into these tanks, which meant that when you fill up the tanks, you can't build another tank, because the tanks need to be, in that case, need to be probably 12 feet thick of steel, so you're not getting killed by gamma shards, X-rays, and neutron bursts. So you couldn't fill up all the tanks, in other words. The tanks were built to trick you into thinking they didn't kill the Pacific Ocean and poison the food chain worldwide.
Lewis!
But trying to explain that to somebody is like this here, look.
Mom! Mommy! Mama! Ma! Mommy! Mama!
What?
Hi.
That's the,
Lewis!
that was actually modeled after somebody that works at the IAEA. And so, you got to explain now, the tsunami in 2011 is mostly known for Fukushima, right? Most people think of Fukushima. Okay, so I'm just trying to build you a picture before we get into this. So a 7 is the Japanese scale, 1 to 7. And so you got to divide 7 into 10 and to get the Richter scale for the international scale, because it's stupid, but that's what Japan does, and so does Taiwan. So a 6 plus 6, for instance, would be a 9.4 on the Richter scale. And so the red, you're talking about on the international scale, like a 9.4 earthquake off the coastline yesterday. a day and a half ago. And so this is from yesterday. You can see the whole country was physically shaking. Now, where did the earthquake here first come ashore, so to speak, was in the 6+ area. And Fukushima Prefecture, straight in the coastline. Fukushima nuclear meltdown is straight in the coastline. So there's the nuclear meltdown. Nami was the official 45 miles offshore is where off Nami. But Nami is 15 kilometers from the nuclear meltdown site. And the nuclear meltdown site has multiple nuclear reactors. Here's 2 of them. And these reactors were 800 tons. Chernobyl was 200 tons. It's just trying to lay foundation for everybody, so you actually know why we're talking about this subject. Because this is real, what we're talking about. There's no opinions, there's no conjectures here. This is facts. I only deal in facts, and I provide the documentation, which is stupid because it doesn't make any difference. But I'll do it. I keep doing it because why not? So this was reactor 4. This was a 190-foot tall building with the reactor pools, with decades of 800-ton reactor cores stored at the very top of the building. Chernobyl didn't have those attributes. Reactor 3 was the same thing, but reactor 3 was what's known as a mixed oxide fuel reactor. So they're using reclaimed hot particles, is the best way to explain it in layman's terms, if that's even possible in the nuclear industry. So they reclaimed the hot particles, the fission product from used fuel and reactor nuclear bombs that were decommissioned, so to speak. And that's what they were burning in reactor 3. And I say burning because the idea, see, they're supposed to store it for millions of years, but instead of storing it, they burn it in the reactor and release it into the environment in increments over several years, rather than storing it for millions, because you can't destroy it. These fission products we're worried about that will make you and insects and animals and birds and mammals and everything else incredibly sick. Anything with replicating cells is extraordinarily vulnerable. Okay. Now, when you take the fuel out of a reactor, it's considered by the EPA in the United States, identifies it this way. It's 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So then they reclaim it and put it in reactor 3. So it's extremely volatile stuff we're talking about. It's 1 billion times worse than the terrible stuff that's coming out. It's most of the byproduct radiation fallout is not iodine or cesium, even though that's a large percentage. The majority of it is curium isotopes. Curium killed all the animals in all the experiments in all the countries worldwide. Billions of animals. And so for curium isotopes, you need lead shielding that's 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. So it's very dangerous, very small amounts for very long periods of time. So 2 sieverts an hour of better radiation emitted from a single liter of leaked water. This was an accident they had there. But we have much more documentation than that one, right? We have just an absurd amount of documentation that I'm not going to put you through tonight. And
Lewis!
And that anymore tonight. Okay, so reactor 1, 10 sieverts. Now, this is a Kevlar sarcophagus they built around it for 5 years. Then they took it off. Now, if you took a square foot of that sarcophagus, which is Kevlar, if you took a square foot of it and brought it to a local subway in 1,000 years, everybody walked past it would die that day. Even if it was 1 billion people walked past it, they'd all die that day. That's how toxic this stuff is, and for how, even in 1 million years, if you took it to a mall in a different solar system, And there's a species that are replicating cells. Okay, so at the top of the building was deck-edge reactor cores. That was caught fire and blew up and blew up and caught fire and blew up and it was gone. But a percentage of it at melting at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature went down through it and also through the reactor core. And both of that went down into the water table, what's known as the China syndrome. Maybe I'll touch on that after. Okay. Unit 2, same thing, we're completely liquefied. It burnt continuously for several days. So we're worried about these reactors shaking and having a chain reaction. And the reason we're worried about a chain reaction is because the radioactive fallout covers the entire planet and harms all the species on the planet. Okay, and so when you look at these buildings, one of the first headlines that came out, was reactor 3 over there, this was reactor 4. So the media immediately started lying with stories like plugged with liquid glass. With a mixture of sawdust and newspaper, they fixed the nuclear meltdown. That's the official story, one of the types of cover stories that came out from the industry. So reactor 3 and 4, what they'd done was an actual cover story to cover up what's going on there. And so they put a container, they built off-site, brought it in with cranes, and they put it over the reactor 3 structure, which is over there. They tore it down till there was nothing left. And then they pretended they were on top of the building. That's the cover story. And pretend like it wasn't bad. They didn't lose the inventories, the reactor cores, or the fuel pools. That's the official picture of a building that don't even exist. They also done the same thing with reactor 4. Reactor 4, this structure doesn't physically touch the other building. You can't go near that. That's a lethal dose. This is all done with cranes. And he sacrificed a lot of homeless people to do that. And so that was TEPCO's base plan to trick you into Unit 4. And then they always have these Photoshop. Another thing you'll always notice on the site is everything got steel plates, 8-foot by 16-foot steel plates on the ground everywhere you go. But you can see behind them, now, there's a good possibility this is Photoshop, by the way, because you're going to be getting a lethal dose standing up there. Now, they have been known to sacrifice a lot of homeless at all kinds of nuclear accidents worldwide. Fukushima, we have an incredible amount of confirmation. On the back of reactor 4, you won't see this picture anywhere else on the planet, was a picture on Japan Times that I took down. It was a very high quality. I grab a lot of this stuff for the files. And I was surprised how high quality it was. And I was able to actually physically zoom in. We've never seen this before. And all the rubble there. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is they couldn't get back into the control room until 2018. But in 2013, they claimed they were on top of the melter reactor. So they couldn't get inside the control room, but yet they were able to...
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled.
That's one of many medias claiming they're inside the building that don't even exist. So there's a cover-up for a reason, because this stuff is so deadly for so long. No pun intended. So they tricked everybody with a cover on Reactor 3 and tricked everybody with a cover on Reactor 4. They're actually about to do the same thing now for Reactor 2. Helen Caldecott wrote 14 books.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine. The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control...
Because I'm getting a message here that says I'm not getting enough stream. I actually have 1.5 gigabytes of bandwidth. But it's saying it's not able to... Are you folks getting an okay stream out there? Is everybody... There's no interference. I don't see anybody saying the stream is bad. I'll just keep going here. This is a known suppression technique, but it could be real. You never know. So she said they fixed it and it does look real. But you can't have a new building out of a destroyed building and call it the same building. And you can't build a building back there because it's lethal doses. Looks good. Andrew, James Lucid, Richard, everybody's saying it looks good. Okay, let's keep going. John Curtis, Christopher. Well, there's people all around the world saying it's fine, so let's keep going. Okay, so I showed you reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the problem is we're worried about these buildings, which are the first part of the coastline where the earthquake is coming ashore. It's right off the coastline, is going to shake these fragile buildings. Because even though they built these covers over it, it still looks like that underneath it. Right? You can't, that's why they built the cover. So 2 of them are covered, but they actually look the same underneath. Okay? Okay, so there was more than that. That's 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools. There's 2 fuel pools at the top of each building. They don't have a repository, and they have decades of reactor. Well, they had. They're actually gone. So last year, and I'm just trying to, before we jump into it, so they released pictures last year, 736. There's actually a playlist on my front page where I've done presentations on these pictures. And what you're looking at, they had zoomed in. I zoomed in on the drone pictures that were released last year. And behind me would be reactor 3, reactor 4 would be here. That's the common spent fuel pool over there with over 10 million pounds of fuel into it. Used fuel. And so why did they pixelate everything? That was a really interesting question. So you got reactor 1, 2, 3, 4, but you have to ask yourself, why did they pixelate the common spent fuel pool? Why would you do that? And that was stunning. When I zoomed in on the pictures, it was completely and utterly pixelated. And this is the common spent fuel pool. Remember, that's where all kinds of reactor cores are supposed to be stored, but they don't have a repository. So they'll have these things will be stuffed because the reactors were there almost 40 years. I'll give you context. The containers back there are transport truck containers piled up that are washed up. So it's a big facility, but it doesn't even stop there. So you got reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the common spent fuel pool is 5 major, huge, massive buildings of reactors and fuel pools that was lost. Okay, it actually gets worse. Let me get out of the way. So now I'm going to take you over to reactor 5 and 6. Now you can see this is reactor 4 in front of you to the right, and a common spent fuel pool to the left. Everything is pixelated. Look at this. Why did they pixelate everything except for that little section there, which is really surprising? That's reactor 4. You can see that's utterly gutted. That's what's left of reactor 2. Again, this is why did they pixelate everything? As you head over towards reactor 5 and 6, and I'll just go back one, that's the dry storage. That's lower than the reactors were. So that would have got pummeled. And you can see how water circulates the back of it and would come back out the front of it. Okay, we're almost here. And you can see the tanks that got destroyed, how much power went along this section of the coastline. Now up there, well, you can see the tanks actually, one of those tanks don't even belong there. So 5 and 6, reactor 6 and the pump house, the turbine buildings, is redacted. These pictures were released last year. Nobody bothered having a conversation about it either. We're the only, that I know about, the only people on the planet actually produced any of these pictures. And you'll find that in my playlist. There'll be links to the original pictures. They're in Chinese. I found it on a Chinese site, but you have to translate everything. Okay, so you got reactor 1, 2, 3, 4, common, and 5 or 6, and a common spent fuel pool, and which means now you've got 10 fuel pools at the top of the 5 reactors. And the reactors originally are 800 tons of pure uranium, pure plutonium, except for reactor 3 was mixed oxide fuel, which is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Okay, so Fukushima reactor site engulfed by steam. So this was the China syndrome. So TEPCO confirmed steam coming out of the ground at 4.7 sieverts an hour. So the reactor cores melted down into the earth at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, consuming all the steel and rebar and cement and rocks and gravel and water, atomizing and aerosoling, ionizing and radiating it, and releasing it as in massive plumes that's covering the entire planet, like this one here of the Xenon-133, which burns a hole through your lungs and insects and birds and animals and mammals, and sequesters in your bones. Massive radioactivity release at Fukushima going on for almost 3 years. 3 years straight. The visible steam is just the tip of the iceberg. Now I'll show you at the actual steam. This is 40 times regular speed to your right. And the steam is coming out of the ground as lethal doses in 6 places, to the extent that the whole site disappears in a radioactive death plume. So they had to abandon this site constantly because of radioactive death plumes. And so when you hear resulting destruction will take half the planet with it if they have another earthquake, and they just had a major earthquake right off this coastline where all these fragile reactors are too, you might want to consider what I'm talking about and take it into the proper context, because you can have this happen afresh. It's already happened, and this model is only based on 20 days. The radiation pulses at the speed of, almost the speed of light. Okay. Now, quickly, before we'll be right to the headlines shortly, but in 2018, earthquake buries homes in a landslide in Hokkaido. 22,000 people were involved in the rescue of a 6.6 quake. And so the whole world is like, 6.6, right? Lots of them. No, well, actually, this was 6.6 on the Japanese scale of 7. It was 6 points upgraded to 6.7 on Japanese scale is 7. And so it was 130 aftershocks. It was 18 miles deep and about 45 miles off the coastline, the same distance as the one we had yesterday. And each year we get major vicious earthquakes at the same in March of each year, we notice. So registered a magnitude 6.7. On the Richter scale, that's actually a 9.5. And so when you look at the damage in Hokkaido, which is northern island of Japan, you can see the incredible damage, but it's still hard to appreciate it until you see the landslides. Notice the mountains on both sides are landslides? You've never seen nothing like that, right? But there was a nuclear power plant because this earthquake was right on the land. CDX, that's actually on land. But right alongside of that, about 20 kilometers away, is the Tomari nuclear power plant. It was right alongside the heaviest damage, where you had massive landslides, where mountains mountains of all sides of mountain ranges had collapsed. We've never seen that. That was hid away from you. When people talk about earthquakes, they're not going to talk about that one. Have you ever seen pictures like that before? Because they hid that one. They called it under the Japanese scale of 6.6. So the world's 6.6 earthquake. So people weren't really paying attention. That was on purpose. But the radioactive plumes from Fukushima, this is another model of them, are serious. Okay, so currently, you see upper 6 and 7, actual 7. They're showing you an actual 7 on the map there. Right at ground zero of all those nuclear power plants I showed you. And I want to remember all that for the rest of this, because you say there's damage everywhere else. People got killed, 161 injured, 4 people dead, lots of damage, bridges damaged, blah, blah, blah. But there's no damage to the fragile reactors at ground zero where the earthquake comes to shore. Yeah, it shook the whole country, but it didn't hurt the closest area to it. So, there's all kinds of this we covered last night. And let's get into it. And you can see today's pictures where it done all this damage far, far past the nuclear power plant, but didn't damage the nuclear power plant. I think it's stunning betrayal that the IAEA this afternoon came out with a story, said no safety concerns at the nuclear power plant after a powerful earthquake. Japan informs the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not really any international. They're a lobbyist. They're pro-nuclear. They promote nuclear. So they're saying there's no damage to these 2 fragile remains, but there's damage everywhere else. So the poll tonight is... Hi, everybody. Is Japan and International Atomic Energy Agency covering up the damage at the Fukushima nuclear meltdown? We have resounding yes, 96%, which is obviously the right answer. We have 31 likes up. And I noticed my like button stopped after the show last night for about 12 hours. We couldn't get any more likes on my channel. It's censorship, but I couldn't care less. I stopped worrying about that years ago. So a powerful earthquake, they admit it's a powerful earthquake. It was off the eastern coast, right off 45 miles away from multiple nuclear meltdowns. What we identified just now as 6 multiple nuclear meltdowns, including the Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power station, the country's nuclear regulation authority, who should be replaced, obviously, because they're not willing to do their job. So this was up in Soma. This is about 70 kilometers away. Major damage, but no damage to the fragile buildings. The NRC says deficiencies were found at some of the nuclear facilities, but not at Fukushima. Even though we got a story where they claimed the tanks moved a few centimeters. We'll get to it. But these buildings are okay. Everything else is damaged. Earthquake struck about 60 kilometers off the damaged reactors. So you can see the whole coast was shaken. Half of Japan was shaken violently. These reactors were the ground zero, the first things to get shook, and there's no damage. A force strong enough to move some of the hundreds of seismically qualified tanks. Seismic qualified. But didn't move the fragile reactor buildings, Dana. Not even a single Becquerel was released. So why should anybody how can you trust the nuclear industry? How does that actually work? And therefore, shouldn't they be replaced? Now, I'm being polite tonight, so give me a break. Created or treated. They got the word treated. Treated water. Treated. Really interesting they would put those words there because you can't actually treat the water there. Where treated water is stored following the 2011 Fukushima accident by between 2 and 10 centimeters. So they're claiming the tanks move between 2 and 10 centimeters. What you're looking at there, by the way, is known as the Bromson-Lung effect. It's a braking effect. And so this is ground zero, Fukushima nuclear meltdown. What happens is you get all these releases all the time. They're not going to admit it, but the evidence is overwhelming what's going on here. And each of these atoms, I put that in there to give you the concept. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. But there it is. It's there. You guarantee it. Like my Geiger counter is reading it. We can't physically see it. But we know it's there because the Geiger counter said so. But that's only gamma. My Geiger counter is not finding plutonium, uranium, americium, neptunium, curium, the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. But anyway, each of these, here and there, are pulsing energy at the speed of light. Well, almost. 186,000 miles per billionth of a second when they pulse or something. They pulse energy in every direction, uniformly, like a bomb explosion, because that's what they really are to your DNA and your chromosomes. Okay, and so what happens is gamma, alpha, neutron, beta, they don't mix. And what I mean by that is when they pulse at the speed of light, they hit each other at the speed of light, they actually change direction. You know how a magnet will change direction, different or the same polarities? This is deadly. Does the same thing, but it's deadly. And it does it just as quick, but except actually quicker, at the speed of light. And that creates another effect, a certain kind of an X-ray that will sterilize all the insects and bacteria and everything else in the forest and the continent and your community and your house and everything else. Tanks at the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant leaked highly radioactive water. Mari Yamaguchi, she's obviously a public relation firm for the nuclear industry. She's been around since day one, and she spreads the light, everybody else regurgitated. So 1,000 steel tanks. Do you know how many tanks they got today? 1,000. That was 2013, 1,000 tanks. 2014, 1,200 tanks. You know how many tanks they claim they got today? 1,000 tanks. You know how many tanks they claimed they had last year? 1,000 tanks. You know how many tanks they claimed they had in 2020? 1,000 tanks. It's the same thing in 2019. You know how many tanks we counted? 750. They're not filling tanks up. Tanks are meant to trick you into thinking that everything is hunky-dory. Let's get on to it. So just one hot particle can cause a cancer. And the cesium goes directly into your muscles like your heart and causes heart attacks and strokes. And a single particle of plutonium will cause a tumor on the lung. And this is a quick model from France based on 16 days of radioactive fallout. And I'll stop it this time. And as you can see, it covers the whole planet in 16 days. So a single atom meant all the species on the planet are disappearing. We're actually looking at an extinction event because of the Fukushima radioactive fallout. It's not just cesium, it's 1,000 kinds of fallout. So they had lots of damage way past the reactors, but no damage to the fragile buildings. So they're not dysfunctional, they're just basically degenerate lawyers. That's what the International Atomic Energy actually is. They're degenerate lawyers, right? The NRA said it did not plan any further updates in the situation. this is the International Atomic Energy Agency website, by the way. They're not going to do any further updates on destroyed buildings. That's quite interesting. They're not concerned. So it done this damage far, far, far past the nuclear meltdown. The whole country was shaking. There's lots of evidence now of more major damage all over the place, but they're not worried about the reactor buildings. They're worried about things 100 miles, 200 miles away. Fukushima Bridge was damaged by a powerful earthquake. That's today. No speech. You can see the damage to the building coming up, to the bridge. The damage to this bridge way past inland nuclear reactors that are destroyed. The major damage to the bridge, because that's supposed to be a frost, that's like a frost where it can expand. It's not supposed to stick up like that ever. And you can see it shifted right off its foundation. So the earth had to move significantly in order for that to happen. But there's no damage at ground zero. Okay. How convenient for the nuclear industry, I might add. So you can see this is way off its foundation. Look at this. Again, it's just overwhelming evidence, damage that they say happened. This is today's stuff. I think it's stunning for them to make those types of claims. The whole country was shaken, see? And Fukushima and Miyagi prefectures were the hardest hit prefectures. This was now we haven't seen a headline like this in 8, 9, 10 years. Japan shouldn't allow another nuclear leak cover-up. Wonder where they got that idea to yesterday. After Fukushima earthquake. Global Times editorial. Because the lobbyists are not going to write it. So they're showing damage. Hopefully everybody's okay. Japan lost the electricity power with many buildings on fire or damaged. And a bullet train was running in Miyagi Prefecture derailed. There's actually pictures of that coming up. The bullet train, they travel at 200 miles per hour, by the way. Local people are very concerned about the safety of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. That's a fact, actually. And this is also the common concern of Japan's neighbors, like China. Nuclear security is not trivial. Fukushima nuclear tanks leak, which I showed you is not a leak, it's a total destruction, were not properly addressed the last time, despite the cardboard and glue. I showed you those headlines. It is hoped that cardboard and sawdust, that's how they fixed it. That's what they claim, right? and what they claim, they fixed it with cardboard and sawdust, and it wasn't leaking anymore into the ocean. Remember that headline earlier tonight? Japan Prime Minister Krista told reporters earlier on Thursday no abnormalities were reported at any nuclear plants. I mean, that's all he said in every single story. Every story. Never mentioned coal, oil, or gas plants, just the nuclear plants. Noting it won't issue a new notice unless there is a special abnormality. We hope it's a blessing in misfortune. But such ambiguity and understatements hardly assuage others' doubts, and such an attitude is by no means responsible either. We would like to ask, how did TEPCO confirm the safety of these tanks, storage tanks for nuclear contaminated water in just a few hours? Which is the question we had posed last night, right? How did they figure out that there was no damage anywhere in the first 90 minutes? Because that's when the reports, it happened at 11:36 p.m. their local time. And by 1 a.m. they said there's no damage at any nuclear power plants, which meant you had to scour miles and square miles because these sites are big sites. So it's extraordinarily unusual to see any clapback or pushback or blowback whatsoever, yeah? Have Japanese regulatory authorities confirmed what TEPCO said? TEPCO acknowledges May 20 last year that corroded seawater leaked from storage tanks at the Fukushima nuclear plant, and some radioactive material has been released into the sea 2 months after the leaks began. But as I showed you earlier, this was a catastrophic event. TEPCO, a company monopolizing Kanto in terms of electricity, is a model of Japanese corporations in providing political donations. Well, TEPCO doesn't exist anymore. It's nationalized. It's taken over by the government right away because it went bankrupt and it was on the stock market. And that's how that works in Japan. It's corporate personhood. And so it gets taken over by the guarantee, which is the government in this case, because it's nuclear, right? And TEPCO doesn't even exist anymore. So it's the Japan government that, when you hear the word TEPCO, it's the Japanese government, which is the inbreeds of the inbreeds of the inbreeds of the inbreeds. The relationship between the Japanese government and TEPCO, which is one and the same, by the way, should have been one of supervision and enforcement, but they're one and the same. There is no one supervising the government either, by the way. But it has become a mode of mutual benefit because they're one and the same. The government, aka TEPCO, has covered up accidents, tampered with data many times, all under the cover of the Japanese government turning a blind eye. Nuclear power plants have formed interest groups with Japanese government, regulatory authorities, nuclear industry experts, and shareholders, scholars rather, which is becoming a long-standing deceit. How could this make people not worry or not concerned? And Fukushima, the entire region, cannot afford another nuclear leak cover-up, given its previous poor records. Well, the region is the planet. On the other hand, it's necessary the International Atomic Energy Agency, which we got a poll tonight on, send expert team, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency are the players to cover, what's the proper word for it? The apologists retired, and now they get a cushy job at the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're professional lawyers. They actually went to school to get a high education, to get a job, to come out and publicly lie to people about as a lobbyist, inside lobbyist. Right? We have many examples of that over the years. On the other hand, it's necessary the International Atomic Energy send experts which are one and the same as them. TEPCO cannot make the conclusion that no abnormalities now. It must make continuous full disclosure rather than just make a... It's not like they're not even making an effort. Their job is not to tell the truth. But it was interesting anyway to have someone finally go, holy shit, can't be real. Then when they look it up and try to debunk me, they realize, crap, it's impossible to do a better job than me for documentation because I live, eat, and breathe this year after year after year. Day after day, non-stop. At least 4 people dead following Japan's earthquake, magnitude upgraded to a 7.4. At least 4 people dead is the actual number. And these are aftershocks they're showing off the coastline. Look at that. Get you some of that. Another potential meltdown in Fukushima. Oh, and look who they got. They got Linda Guntner, Paul Guntner. Beyond Nuclear, Helen Caldicott I showed you earlier. They're a public relation firm. They're the cover story. They're the controlled opposition. Their job is to displace people like me and you, right? They're incredible scum. And so what did she say? If there's no, basically, warns us of the continued danger of a nuclear meltdown at several of the damaged plants in Fukushima. The damaged plants is Fukushima reactor Dai-ichis, as a result of another possible tsunami. Right? So if you don't have a tsunami, nothing to worry about. This is absurdness, by the way. The reactor is so fragile, you're worried that the earthquake shook them and caused them to go into a recriticality, aka chain reaction, which is what happened. 7.4 magnitude quake hit north of Japan, tsunami risks receding. This is today's headline, but it's Mari Yamaguchi. That's the cover story, see? 7.4. It's not even supposed to be there. Yeah, we had 94 likes, and 12 hours later I had 96. And then I start getting likes again. Every video is like that, by the way. So the BBC says 2 are dead after Japan hit by tremor. At least 90 were injured. This is an update, right? They're still calling it a tremor. Right? Remember yesterday they were doing it too? And BBC is owned by the lobbyists, also known as the government. In some areas, it was too forceful for people to stand. But the fragile reactor buildings are okay, Dana. So are the other fragile reactors, Dana. Yeah, it dropped houses and buildings and walls and broke bridges and tore apart the earth and highways, but never damaged the fragile reactors. The industry is pretty disgusting. Blah, blah, blah. The victims, bless their hearts. A number of people across northeastern Japan were hurt by falling objects or infalls. So this one shows you the radius. Now, ground zero, the epicenter, you think would get, and they say that was the worst hit area, but the fragile reactor buildings are okay. They got no damage, but everything else did, everybody else did. 2 dead, there's actually 4 dead, 161 injured by the time I went live tonight. You get different variations all day long, I notice. So I didn't screen capture everything because it was already covered last night's show or was irrelevant to the facts that were coming out. I was looking for discrepancies mostly. Japanese prime ministers later said no abnormalities have been detected at the nuclear power plants. What about the oil plants and coal plants and gas plants? Immediately every story had that sentence in it. Every story. And how many stories did I aggregate? Let's open the file up. I'll tell you in a second. That's not it. I need my glasses or what? Yeah, so there was 86 stories. That's them there. Notice how many of them said powerful? Because you can see, like when you... Because that's not in the order that I done it in, right? So when you sort it by order, you can kind of get a better look. There you go. It actually should be... My apologies. Should be ascending, right? So that was the first story up there. And you can see... patterns, right? Start to play out. Because that's what we do. We look for patterns. Particularly the first couple of days or first couple of weeks, depending on the nuclear event. Because they're important down the road, too. Say that kind of information. Let's keep it rolling here. We got a poll tonight, in case anybody's paying attention, is Japan and the International Atomic Energy Agency covering up damage at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. 57 votes, 96 stunning percent. Thank you, everybody. We got 48 likes and 54 people on the show. 114 people dropped by. I'm censored. It's hard to appreciate that I've been at this for a decade, and the best I can hope for. Oh, hang on. Because Google won't let me embed the video until I go live. And so every time I go live, I got to go and set the settings so that it's now anybody that wants to embed the live show can. It's always, even though I do it when I preamble, as soon as I hit save, I got to open it all up again and check the box again. I'm not going to bore you, but there, it's done. 35 miles from Nami, 57 kilometers. So it's unusual to see this particular picture. There was only CNN done it last night, and again today they put it the same picture. It's right at ground zero, but no damage to ground zero. 78 people were trapped on the train. They escaped uninjured. You can see apartment buildings got damaged. Highways were split open. How big is that split? I mean, it runs a long way up the road there. But there was no damage to the fragile reactors right at ground zero. I mean, my goodness, how lucky are they? Thousands of Japanese households still without power. A powerful quake hit the northeast coast, leaving 4 dead and over 100 injured, some seriously. The bullet train service is indefinitely suspended, and one major highway to the region closed for safety checks. Prime Minister said 4 people died, that the government would be on high alert for the possibility of further strong tremors. So this could be the precursor to a big one. They had 6.4 2 minutes before the 7.4, which is a 9.4 on an international scale, was described as an upper 6 on a seismic intensity scale of Japan, which is a scale of 1 to 7. Rennes says electronics, the world's biggest maker, automotive microchips, said it was checking for quake damage at 3 plants in Japan. 3 different plants. In Tokyo, Nissan stopped working. 4 dead and more than 100 injured by powerful quake. And officials said there's no abnormalities at the nuclear power plant. When you see that in every headline, it's because there's abnormalities at the nuclear power plant. And that one they claimed 107. The official story is 161 injured so far. He said, grocery shop owner said, when we felt the tremor last night, we already knew we would, which he didn't say tremor, he would have said earthquake. We already knew what we would have to work on here in the morning. He said it'd take around a month to get the store back together. So when he felt the earthquake, they knew it was a lot of work had to be done at their shop. But no problem at ground zero where the multiple nuclear meltdowns are too, right where the earthquake comes to short. No, right in front of that place where it happened. No damage there. It's disgusting, isn't it? 30,000 homes still without power on Thursday morning. 43 homes without water. And shifted the ground and snapped off the water pipes. So it's a big job because you got to dig up for a long way to get a bead on them, right? You can't just put because the water feeds probably hundreds of thousands of people. You can't just put a 90-degree buckle there. Around the stricken Fukushima plant, extensive decontamination has been carried out and a no-go zones. Now, we've seen this same couple of sentences in pretty well 80% of the stories. Day after the quake, 4 dead, 100 injured, no power for tens of thousands. Lots of damage everywhere else but at ground zero where the earthquake came ashore. That's a friggin' miracle, that's what that is. Tens of thousands of Japanese households without power on Thursday morning. Parts of buildings and facades tumbled into the streets below in some areas. Television footage showed a steep tile roof crumpled over a parked crushed car and workers examining cracked highways. La la la. 7.4 magnitude quake caused minor damage to Daiwa House Logistics Trust properties in Sendai Port and Koriyama, brutal radioactive fallout there. We covered many times. Right, there's so many communities they wouldn't evacuate. It's just hard to wrap your mind around. But every once in a while I'll show a list from Unclear back in 2012, and it's pretty shocking. Cleanup begins. Workers at the Fukushima Dai-ichi nuclear power plant reported that tanks holding radioactive water were out of alignment and that a steel beam might have fallen. Did it fall or didn't it? And they claimed the tanks were out of alignment. These tanks are huge tanks. They're not fragile like the reactors. And they got to hit, the earthquake has to hit the reactors before it can get to the tanks or the rest of the country. Spewing massive radiation still makes some parts uninhabitable. 170 claimed there. So it can do damage to these stores. Another 50 kilometers inland, but it doesn't damage ground zero. This is Miyagi Prefecture, which is an actual nuclear wasteland, by the way. They only cleaned up 3% of it. The agency upgraded the magnitude of the quake to 7.4 and the depth to 56 kilometers instead of 60. It's significant, see? Walls were broken, front door threw out of place, dishes broken, employees are starting to clean up. The Self-Defense Force delivering fresh water in Soma, Lydiat, and several other coastal towns. When water systems were damaged, the piping was damaged because the earth shifted. So there was a massive earthquake. And they have, most of their newer infrastructures is designed to take the earthquake without falling to pieces. You still get damage, but we noticed over the years they're really slow to report damage in Japan, but not anywhere else on the planet. Yesterday said that workers at the site, which is being decommissioned, found some tanks holding, which is absurdness, but they called up the nuclear industry, said, we're doing a story, we've got to talk about Fukushima, do you want to fill out that blank for us? Because people don't write their own stories about Fukushima, the nuclear industry writes it, the media publishes, and this is Taipei Times, who advocated importing food from the nuclear wasteland. Viciously, I might add, and got their way, didn't they? In the last couple of weeks. Radioactive water were out of alignment due to the rattling. Rattling! And what could be a steel beam fell from a roof of the number 4 reactor building. Well, the number 4 reactor building actually looks like that right there. There is nothing. That's the official picture, by the way. And there's another, I'll show you the other official picture of reactor 4. What happened that time? And this is the official picture. 100 feet above the wreckage over there. Above this section here, this is what they claim it looks like currently. They're saying a beam fell out of that, which actually doesn't even exist. Which has no fuel inside. Because that's the fuel pool. Above the fuel pool right there. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. There is no top of the buildings. They claim they took it out in 2013. But they couldn't even get into the control room till 2018. Which is not even close to the reactors. Well, I'm sorry, which is not in the same building as the destroyed reactors. Or the missing reactors. Power was restored for 2.2 million people, and except for 37,000 homes in Fukushima, Miyagi. So, Fukushima and Miyagi were the hardest hit. Let me get that picture back here. And at the beginning of it, I showed you 6 buildings, 4 for sure confirmed nuclear meltdowns, but 6 very questionable because they hid the documentation I showed you. You got no choice but to say, well, I guess they melted down. So buildings in Tokyo were swaying violently, but which is 200 plus kilometers away, 270 kilometers away. But right alongside of it, these buildings weren't swaying violently. Okay, so there's all kinds of evidence. Express train partially derailed between Fukushima and Miyagi. Again, the evidence is overwhelming that Fukushima and Miyagi were brutal shape, right? Okay. So you had the train. That's the train they were talking about. The bullet train travels at 200 miles per hour. Was knocked off the track. Scary video shows earthquakes that killed 4 and injured dozen. I'm not going to show it to you tonight. All kinds of damages to people's properties. But the International Atomic Energy Agency says there'll be no damage to ground zero. So, and we're not going to report on it anymore, so don't ask. So all this damage way past, and the poor victims got to now go get water. But there's no damage at ground zero where the earthquake came ashore. Gotcha. Media passed off an old image from last year, from February the 13th. And we covered that earthquake for like 5 days because of the cover-up. On my other site that they took down when I was out on a research expedition last year looking for spiders. Because the spiders are missing because of the radioactive fallout. The biggest funder of anti-nuclear war programs is taking this money away. That's a fascinating story. It talks about all the rich people. President Joe Biden has sought to reassure Americans nuclear exchange is unlikely. And he's probably right. But the cost of such a war, we're talking about a potential extinction level event. Potential extinction level event. Potential extinction level event. Okay, so I do a lot of research expeditions each year for a decade.
may be worse than thought.
Here's a
Studies
model
from
from
last year
Germany.
indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German marine research institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
So in just 6 years, the entire Pacific Ocean, that's running out of the ground. But the problem was, it fell out of the sky too. This is a 40-day model of the radioactive fallout. It's speeded up to double its original speed. And you can see radiation covering the entire planet, right? But there's confirmations that cesium, which is code word for uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, curium, etc., isotopes, remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. So the tanks are meant to trick you and deceive you, see? So another trick they done to you was they showed you that map over there and called it radiation map of NOAA. But NOAA actually had a cesium dispersal map that was hid away and was leaked online and confirmed to be true. So I launched research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia, all the way to Alaska, and there's 27,000 islands up there. And so I went up there year after year, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean, counting species. This is one of the expeditions. Each year I'm in that boat for sure, including last year and this year. And I also do land estuaries and places like that where we go in and check it and record everything. Because you got to think about what's going on here. So, New York Times, ocean life faces mass extinction. We may be on the precipice of a major extinction event in marine wildlife. But that's based upon my research expeditions. I'll show you what I mean. So, to your left is what it's supposed to look like, and to your right is what it actually looks like, because I went there and verified it. So the pictures to your left is before, and the pictures to your right are after. We went there for 6 years, and all those species to your left are exterminated. They never came back. They're gone. And that's just a fraction what you're seeing there of the species that should be there. So tomorrow I'll be doing this. And there's rabbit tracks right there by the looks of it. This is what I'll be doing tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday. That's rabbit tracks there. We're in doing species counts, but fresh snow is great because you can find it. We have trail cams. That little fox spent a lot of time right here. We still haven't got him on camera. Bastard. You see, when you see the tracks are thick like that right there. And then they go just single up here again where he's on the move. No birds. Should be lots and lots of birds. And there's another set of rabbit tracks. That's most likely a different set than the last set we've seen. But the fox looks like he kept going. Looks like he kept going. The rabbit tracks are... Now I seen them here before, those rabbit tracks. And so that's what that's what I'll be doing tomorrow anyway. And they're dodging along. We'll be checking the trail cams we got. I see we got Concerto radios here. Alex. Hi, Alex. Alex has got well over 1 million subscribers now. He pops by. He found my new site, I see. Okay, so we've done all the research expeditions. Fukushima is already an extinction event. And I know because I went there boots on the ground. Not maybe, not perhaps, not almost. I went there year after year after year and done the research expeditions. And we're doing research expeditions even this year, of course. Every week or 2 weeks. Well, I'm out there every week. So since November, I've been out in the woods. And I don't count birds within a mile of a community. It's only when you get out further. So there's rabbit track. And so I've been doing this since November. We counted 14 birds. 14. And some of these days are very grueling days. Some days you might cover 70 kilometers. I'll be heading back out all weekend because the weather looks good. And I got to kill time before spring. We get out and look for spiders again. And we'll be going for several months when the summer starts because I'm officially a coward now to go out and stay overnight unless the weather is very accommodating. Okay, and so you got destroyed buildings that they covered up and pretended everything is okay. That's reactor 4, and they're pretending it looks like that. And that's reactor 3, and they're pretending that it looks like that. And then I showed you the other reactors. So this is not a game, folks. We've seen it die off all the species year after year after year, and I can't sit in silence like most people, right? Yeah, thanks, Alex. Alex has done good too, man. Alex used to do quite a few really good videos on Fukushima. Definitely one of the better people out there when he was talking about the subject. But he's also a radio host too, right? So, and he translates it into different languages, does different shows. And I always liked the truth, right? And I found definitely Alex told us the truth for sure. No, I haven't seen the units on Google Earth, no. No, I haven't, no. I should do that maybe tonight or tomorrow. I'll be in the woods and all day tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday. We raised another $20 last night. That'll put some fuel in the tank. The price is pretty expensive down here for gas now. So Ralph J, hopefully I didn't screw that up. I haven't got my glasses on. Donated 20, thank you. The nuclear industry gets $1 billion when they, nuclear industry like that, and they get $1 billion. We picked up a lot of tools in the last couple of weeks, so I'm really super happy. That takes a lot of stress off me. I can fix a lot of gear. Because we have I actually have a really big operation. It's okay, Alex. I wasn't suggesting you chip in. That's a sin. Make me feel guilty. Thank you, anyway, for everything you're doing, Alex. Bless your heart, man. And that's the end of the show, everybody. I was thinking about going in and camping a couple days ago, going in and stay in for like 5 or 6 days because that's the cheapest way to do the research, right? And I got a good generator and heaters that I can take with me, right? So run a generator all night long. I got lots of heat. I'll be fine. But it's so cold. Minus 16, minus 20 at nighttime. I just can't see myself doing it. I'm going to come and do a shadow for everybody. I'll go up to the very first comments that I got. Because my comments kind of recycle on the inside of the board here. I'll do a quick shout out because this is the last show of the week because we start on Sundays. Even though I took this Sunday off because we've done a show on Friday. And then we got the earthquake, so we doubled time for the last 48 hours. To Nobody, hi Nobody. Michael Allport, Port Angeles, Jackie Flowers, Richard Peaceware, John Curtis. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. Chelsea. Just all I'm doing is scrolling down through the names and quick shout out from the top down to the most recent. Chet. And Stephen Young. Hugs for Stephen. Stephen's on a long road to recovery from... He missed a whole year of his life already. And now he's finally, in the last month, able to do a few things. Spring Breakers in the Gamma Shine. James Lucid. Jonathan Moreno. Good night, everybody. Darlene. I'm just scrolling down, saying goodnight. Obsolete Optics. Stephen Young said he hasn't eaten seafood or rice since March 11th. You're a smart man. Eat lots of DCA, folks. You can get it on Amazon.com. It's a mineral. You don't need a prescription. You can walk into a pharmacy with a compound chemist. They can make it on site. It's just a mineral like vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and potassium and everything. It unplates your blood and doesn't let cancer survive. It reduced all tumors, large tumors, by 70% in the first 3 weeks, and irradiated all cancers, human cancers, in 3 months, 90 days, with no adverse side effects whatsoever. Better shut up here because Shayla White, I got to read the names. Wolfmango, rather, my apologies. It's another very long day today, trying to gather everything up. Nancy Sands, and last night, I never stop. I'm going to go in the woods for the next number of days. We'll do an update hopefully Sunday. But I'll be putting the bike on the trailer and dragging it around, hopefully. Albert and Dub Blog. I'm double checking everybody the best I can. We're almost down through the names here. Dana Nasana. Hi, Dana. Darren James Spencer. And Alex, of course. Concert Serial Radio. I apologize if I butchered your name. George Sinclair. Yeah, 161 is the official number injured. Number's going to go up for the night. So Thinker. We're almost down there. I'll read the comments later tonight or tomorrow morning, as usual. We're just about there. I'm going to end the poll. Let me bring up the poll. One last time. You got 30 seconds. I'll wait an extra 30 seconds for you folks. Is Japan and the International Atomic Energy Agency covering up damage at the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns? They got a stunning 93% of people saying, hell yeah, they're covering it up. And you're right. You have the moral high ground. I'll end the poll here in about a minute. Do we get everybody? Looks good. Yeah, hug Shayla. Yeah, good night, Stephen Young. Consciousness Radio in Spanish. But he does put up English blogs on his site there too, his YouTube channel. I butchers everybody's name. That's notoriously terrible for doing that. Yeah, thank you, Dana Nisana, for doing the administration. Appreciate it. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. You're awesome, my friend. Did I get everybody? Catch ya? I catch ya. I probably missed one or two people. I'll scroll back up quickly. We're going to end the poll in about 15 seconds. So by the time you hear it, the poll will be over, unfortunately. And H9000. No, I missed somebody. JVC7, I missed that one too. Good night. Dwayne. I missed Dwayne. There's 3. David Allen is 4. Because I'm scrolling back up now. How the hell did I miss 4 people? Mahaver 999. That's 5. My goodness. That's embarrassing. I better get my eyes checked. What the hell, eh? Oh, Omar Mohammed. Yeah, hi there. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Thank you for being here. I'm half afraid to stop now because I missed so many names. That's 7 names, was it? I think that's a record. That's because we had Alex visit us tonight, see? When I seen Alex hit 1 million subscribers, I was so excited for him. I'll never forget it. I was like, finally, one of the good guys wins. Okay, the poll is officially over at 82. I'll pop it up quickly. 82 votes. So end the poll. Yeah, good night, everybody. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody hopefully on Sunday or Monday, because I'll be out researching all weekend. God bless everybody. We'll see everybody on the other side. Take care now. Have a great night and a great weekend. Yeah, you're welcome, Alex. Hugs for you too, my friend. Yeah, hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend. Take care, folks.